Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone. It is the Thursday, April 30th, 2026 episode of the Marco Jure Show. Thank you for tuning in here. Today's groundbreaking news right here in America and across the board, where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. Let's begin the best of radio, informative, uncensored, unapologetic, and ready to go. Great show lineup for us today, ladies and gentlemen. To finish off the month of April, we'll be discussing what's happening in Iran, what's going on with this war, is there any end in sight? By the way, SCOTUS actually is handing Republicans a major win in a gerrymandering case inside of Louisiana. We'll talk about that. Pete Hegseth had a very rough time speaking to the House Armed Services Committee just yesterday about the war in Iran and, of course, budgeting for the future. And likewise, Alex Padilla out of California, the wonderful senator, says the quiet part out loud about voter ID laws right here in America. Again, another reason why we need to pass the SAVE Act right away. I don't know why Republicans are dragging their feet on that one. But to start Thursday's show off, I want to start off the right way. We've got a very, very important economic article I don't want to wait for tomorrow to talk to you about. This is very, very troubling, as I had predicted, and my prognostication unfortunately came true. Let me break this down for you. This is out of CNBC. It says here that consumers faced escalating prices in March as the Iran war sent oil soaring and created a new level of challenges for the Federal Reserve, according to reports about a economic report that showed slower growth than expected and generational low and layoffs. Now, let's make sure we understand one thing here. The inflation rate, the core inflation rate excludes food and energy. Right now, we're sitting at a 12-month inflationary rate of 3.2%. That's according to the Commerce Department. That's what they reported today. Now, we can look at that and say, well, prices are up 3.2% from a year over year, March 2025 to March 2026. This is the highest core inflation rate since November of 2023 under the Biden administration. So we're moving in the wrong direction, first of all. And by the way, we're not even including things like gas prices, oil prices, grocery prices at the store right now, which are all up much higher. When we add all of those in, we're looking at roughly 3.5% inflation year over year. And by the way, I think we're probably being a little bit generous with that. What did I tell you recently? I said inflation is going to hit 4.2% in 2026, so long as we stay in this war. It's going to go up significantly. That's what they were estimating as of late. Those numbers could change, of course, but we're in dire straits right now. Okay? Let's just make sure we're very much so understanding this, folks, because no one else is telling you this right now. We're seeing much, much higher inflation than we ought to be seeing right now. It's going in the wrong direction. Now, on the other part of the economic news for Thursday, that was also released by the Commerce Department, we saw that gross domestic product grew by an annual 2%, seasonally adjusted, for the first pace of quarter one. Now, that was up from 0.5% in the fourth quarter of 2025. They were estimating a 2.2% growth rate. We didn't get it. So we're looking at modest growth at best right now. It's not where we want it to be. A lot of that has to do with artificial intelligence right now, which I told you the government is very, very bullish on. So that's not shocking. That's obviously boosting things up from where it was at the end of last year, especially amid the government shutdown. So we don't even know if we have the right numbers for quarter four of 2025. Now, we also look at the Labor Department. They're reporting that the initial joblessness claims totaled a seasonally adjusted 189,000 for the week ending on April 25th. That was a decline of 26,000 from the week prior and well below the 212,000 estimate. We're seeing a record low reading from not anything since September 1969 for the labor market. So we're seeing low hire and low fire right now for much of the past year. Here's the problem, though. We're almost looking at a split-screen economy. We're seeing less layoffs right now, which is a good thing, of course. We don't want more people laid off. But we've got to understand something. We lost 1.1 million jobs last year. And there's no way that we gained those jobs because we saw all the revisions from last year to present time. We didn't gain those jobs back. So we're looking at negative job growth here in the United States. We're looking at GDP that is stagnant right now. And we're looking at inflation that is much, much higher than it ought to be. So we're looking at stagflation through and through. How is this a good look for the midterms? How is this a good look to go out and vote for your local Republican to go to Congress? Doesn't look good at all. Now, people are coming out, Scott Bessent being one of them, who's being somewhat of a cheerleader for this economy right now. I don't know how he's doing this, but he was speaking with Larry Kudlow. I want you to hear this right away. I don't know how he gets away with this stuff, but we'll break this down exactly after what he's saying. Again, I don't buy it. I'll let you be the one to decide.
We have the most resilient economy in the world, thanks to President Trump's initiatives, both in his first term and his second term. We are an energy superpower. We have never exported as much energy. The crude prices are up, but natural gas prices are actually down since February 27th, which is very, very important. And both the market, the stock market's looking through this, and while sentiment they have come down a bit, consumers are looking through it too by their actions. In terms of retail spending, we're in constant touch with the banks and the consumers of all quintiles of the income level. They are still doing well. We had one of the American car makers in today, and we were told that sales of trucks, they are still going very well.
Okay, so we've got a mixed economy right now. I think we all can agree on that. Again, I don't doubt some of the things he's saying. We have big oil that's very, very happy right now. They get to sell the same barrel of oil for $115 per barrel, where they were selling it for $68 just 2 months ago. They're making a lot of money on that. That's not bad. We're getting some more people wanting to buy trucks. Very good. Okay, fine. But he just made it very clear consumer sentiment is a bit down. And obviously it's because of the inflation rates right now. But we're paying more. We're paying, on average, $4.30 per gallon for gasoline right now across the board in the United States. That's the national average for regular unleaded. When you look at things, though, like diesel, which, again, all the goods and services, anything you're shipping across the country, that's costing a lot more. Those 18-wheelers run on diesel. We're seeing diesel prices at $5.70, $5.80, $5.96. If you're in the Central Valley of California, it's almost $10 per gallon. That's going to have an effect on those goods when they get to market. Those retail prices are going to start going up because they've got to make up for that difference. You got to pay the people shipping that for you. So if the cost coming in is more expensive, right, the producer price index is up, which, again, it's going to go up as time goes on because the oil prices are up. That's going to have this ripple effect all across the economy, folks. And that's not going to bring prices down. It's going to make them rise. So we've got to understand where we are right now. So, Scott Bessent can say, well, we're shipping more oil, exporting it more than we ever have before. Good, that's great. That's great for the people in big oil. But what does that mean for the everyday American? We're diminishing our supply. Well, we're seeing the Brent crude futures go up, WTI, Murbain crude, everything is going up, and it's staying up. It's not going back down. Before President Trump had the rhetoric, well, we're going to end the war really soon. We're bringing the Iranians to the table. We're going to meet this weekend in Islamabad. Everything's working out in our favor. The Iranians are depleted. They're finished. Their military's gone. Their leadership is crumbling. And the markets were fluctuating, right? We'd go up a little bit above $100 per barrel. Then it would come back down. Then it would go back up. He'd say something else. Then it would go back down. So it was going back and forth. But now we're seeing it just kind of staying consistent in about that over $100 per barrel range, which is no good for us at the pump. You were paying roughly, I think it was $68 per barrel about 2 months ago before this war began. West Texas Intermediate was selling at about $62, $63, maybe $65, fluctuating in that range, but in the $60 range. Folks, we're up over $40 per barrel right now, up well over that. We're almost $50 in some cases. That is not good. That's not going to help us. And those prices have to adapt, and they will stay as is. We've got to this. The market has to respond to this. It can't just keep staving it off, which is what we were doing for quite some time because of the rhetoric, the anticipation that the things were going to get better very, very soon, that the war would end, that the Strait of Hormuz would open up. None of that is in effect right now. Everything is in a standstill, and everything that I'm looking at is indicating we're ready for more war soon. When we see service prices overall rising 0.3%, you got to tell yourself something. Yeah, something's happening here. Now, the inflation report also indicated that the bulk of the price pressure came from goods, which rose from 1.4%, boosted by an 11.6% surge in energy goods and services. Never forget where we're headed right now. We're headed for a mass stagflation. Now, very few people are telling you this, but the rise in these energy prices appear to cut into the inflationary adjusted consumer spending that we're seeing right now. Everything has an effect because of the oil prices. Trump has got to bring this down. And by the way, as we deplete our oil price, because what we're doing is we're taking our supply and we're selling it now. We're taking our 19.4 million barrels we're pumping out every day, and we're starting to sell to companies like Japan. Countries like Japan. So what is that going to do for us? It's going to make our prices continue to go up right now. Now, it's good for the oil companies. Don't get me wrong. They're happy. They're loving this right now. They get to sell their oil for much, much more. But we're not going to see the prices at the pump go down because everything is sold on a global market. Never forget that. So we could be the world's biggest producer in oil. I don't doubt that for a second. We are. But supply and demand, folks, when we diminish our supply here in the United States, when we import less oil, we export more of it, you're going to see those prices start to go up. So right now, on a global scale, yes, we're probably paying less than in Europe, in parts of Asia. Absolutely. They're devastated right now. They can't wait to get their hands on gas and oil. But right now, we are struggling still. And we're seeing kind of the brunt of it right now. But the European markets, the Asian markets, they're getting hit really hard right now. And it's affecting them. And that's going to affect us very, very soon. So we're lagging behind, is what I'm trying to tell you. And again, no good for a midterm election year. Just keep that very much in mind. We'll break that down a little bit more tomorrow. And by the way, just before we move on to our next topic of discussion, we've got 4.4% increase in government spending. Yep, that's not a shock. Including a 9.3% rise at the federal level. So when we think about what we're investing in more war, we're investing in munitions and what have you. We're not investing in things like infrastructure, healthcare, and education in the United States, like China is. I'd like to see us invest more in AI. That would at least be a little bit more beneficial to we, the Americans. But we're not seeing that. And that's, again, another very, very big problem. Let's segue over to another article. And by the way, I'm glad I brought up what's taking place inside of Iran because we've got to talk about this. It's out of Bloomberg. It says that Iran's new leader has now pledged to guard nuclear and missile technology. I told you this was going to happen. I said Iran are the ones that are leading this effort right now. They're the ones in control of this war. They're the ones that will dictate what takes place next. It's not the United States, despite what we're being told right now. But they're now vowing to not give up the country's nuclear and missile technologies. And they're signaling that Tehran will continue to control the Strait of Hormuz. What did I tell you was going to happen? I said this to you many times before. I said Iran's holding the cards. If they weren't, we'd go in right now. We'd open up that strait. We'd demine it. We'd open it back up. We'd secure the passage of our allies in the region to allow shipments to come through. But we're not doing that. We're not even getting anywhere near the Strait of Hormuz. We're about 500 miles off coast in the Arabian Sea. We're nowhere near it. We're not opening it up. Now, Mojtaba Khamenei, who's now the new supreme leader, issued a written statement saying all this, that the Islamic Republic will guard its advanced technologies like it does with its own borders, and it will secure the Persian Gulf region and dismantle the hostile enemy's exploitation of this waterway. Again, he's referring to the Strait of Hormuz, and obviously that's very vital for commerce in the region, especially for our Gulf Arab partners. They're making it very clear where they're going. They are not backing down, despite what Trump says or Hegseth or what you hear the talking heads or people in Congress saying right now. The Iranians are not budging because they understand that they are in the position of power right now. Now, we can argue their economy is not doing as well, but neither is ours. Neither is China. Neither are any of these, because especially the European economies, they're in recessions right now. So no one's doing well. This is global turmoil. We're seeing low economic output all across the board right now. Now, the U.S. and Iran show very little sign of breaking an impasse and agreeing to another round of peace talks. And I want to highlight this. This is very important that they mention this. Number one, they're not giving up their nuclear enrichment. Let's just make that very clear. They're not giving that up completely. We've lost that battle a long time ago. They're not going to hand over their stockpiles of highly enriched uranium either. Let's just make sure we're very clear on that. Okay? That's just not going to happen. If that's Trump's hill to die on, let's just hope he doesn't do that, because then we're not going to make any progress in this war. War will continue on much, much further than it ought to be. So, why do I say this to you? What did we just see take place over the weekend? We saw Foreign Minister Arachi go to Oman. Why did he go to Oman? To talk about and broker negotiations about how the fees will be collected in the Strait of Hormuz. They're not giving that up. And if Trump believes that's going to happen, he's very, very mistaken. So that's why he did that. Keep that in mind. That's why he went to speak about that. They're understanding where their partners are in the region. They went over to Pakistan, probably to let the Pakistanis understand exactly what's taking place. This is their negotiating terms. This is what they will accept. This is what they won't accept. They will make it very clear they will not meet until such further time, until that's accepted. They're not going to waste their time with this. So that's why when President Trump said, well, we're not going to send Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, they're not going to talk to those two. They're not interested in speaking to those two because they know that they're empty suits, first of all. They're not going to make any promises on behalf of the United States. Certainly, I don't even know what leveraging power either of them have. They will talk to a J.D. Vance, but they're not going to sit and talk to those two. They understand that those two obviously reflect the United States, but they also reflect Israel's position too. So keep that very closely in mind. What Arachi also did over the weekend, he went and spoke to Vladimir Putin. Now, this is not getting the coverage it should, but this is illustrating that what the Iranians are doing, they're bringing Russia into this. And I don't mean in terms of the war, but they're bringing Russia into this because Russia is now going to be part of these negotiations. I really believe this. I actually really think that Putin is going to be greatly involved in how these peace proposals will go in the future. And they're going to see the backing of the Russians to get this going. And you might see China come in too as far as that goes. Now, I will tell you that China was very, very instrumental in getting the Iranians to go to Pakistan, to Islamabad, to meet with Vance and Witkoff and Kushner originally, because they don't like this war. This war is no good for business. War is not good for them. It's choking off their oil supply. They don't want this. They want to see their economy grow. They don't want to see it be dampered down with the United States maybe taking their oil on the high seas. They don't want this. It's not good for them. It's not good for business. And right now they're heavily invested in things like AI and in the mining and what have you, but they need that oil. All right, they need that part of their infrastructure to get things moving. It's part of their economy. Now, people are saying, well, the United States has this blockade. We're going to keep up with this. It's going to, stymie the economy. They're going to budge sooner or later. Probably not going to happen, though. And why I say this to you is because they have the freight lines that can go to the east. Pakistan borders them, so they can ship to the east very easily and into China, because China also borders in that area, too. So it's not going to be difficult for them to put things by rail. Now, that will cost more. But it'll probably take a little bit longer, but they can do these things. They can do these things as well. So it's not like China will be totally void of getting their oil from the Iranians. It's not true. They can still get that because they can ship it through the railway. By the way, we saw the Israelis bomb that, and of course it was since rebuilt. But this is the East-West alliance, I guess, if you want to say that. But this railway, this Silk Road, if you will, exists. So they can ship very, very easily to the east, to Pakistan, to China on the markets. They can use the Caspian Sea to ship north to countries like Russia. So the Iranians, just because if the strait were to stay closed, or if they were fearful that the United States was going to sink their ships with, 2 million barrels of oil on it, well, it's not the end of the world. They have other ways, and of course, in which they can move things. So don't believe what you're hearing right now. that the Iranians have no access to ship their oil. It's not true. Now, they'll have to be a little bit more innovative with it. But overall, they can still, obviously, ship it should they need to. And, of course, still get it to China, which the United States believes they're bogging down right now with this closure of the Strait of Hormuz. It's not working. And, by the way, we saw 40 ships passing through right now. We know the United States has said they've stopped certain number of ships. Whether that's true or not, I can't tell you. Again, we know that 40 have crossed through. So we don't have the fleet, is what I'm trying to tell you, to do this. We simply don't have the numbers. If they send a certain number of ships through at one time, the United States is not going to be able to sequester all of them and stop them and board them. And then they have to be also fearful that if some of these ships start putting machine guns and what have you on them, that puts our Marines at greater risk, just to be clear with you on that. Now, Iran has said it will not open the strait up to commercial vessels until the United States lifts its blockade, which the United States has said it's not going to do as of right now. So there you go. It's also unclear how long Iran has left before it runs out of oil storage, and of course, it will force to cut its production. Again, I don't think that's going to happen. Now, they could store oil on Kark Island, if you will, and for their oil tankers. They have lots of capacity to do so. But if it ever came to that point, they would actually start shipping, and I believe they would start putting that through rail, and I guess they would invest in that way. Now, if they could start that overnight, I don't know. I can't tell you that, but I know they have that access power. So just keep that in mind. They have the ability to put their oil, their other goods, other services they ship to countries like China or Pakistan or, Turkmenistan or whoever they're shipping it to. It doesn't matter. And ship it east. They can do it like that. So let's just keep that in mind, that Iran is not simply just isolated from the rest of the world right now because of this naval blockade. Just keep that in mind. Now, why do I say all this to you? I say this to you also because Trump also talked to Vladimir Putin, and Putin actually asked if he would like Russia to offer help. It's not just the news with the conflict in Iran and, of course, the enrichment of uranium, which he declined in hopes of getting the war with Ukraine to end instead. This is President Trump now. So it seems like Putin is kind of giving the feeler out there. Let me negotiate with you. Let's all sit down and talk about this. This is why I'm telling you, this is the genius of the Iranians. I'm not saying President Trump is stupid. What I'm saying to you is that the brokers in the region, the Iranian, the Chinese, the Russians in the region, they are very close. They are all a part of BRICS. And I think what you're seeing is this alliance coming together to say, let me offer to help with you. Let's work on this conflict in Iran. Let's talk about this enrichment. Trump says, I'd rather just talk with you about the Ukraine war. But I think Putin is really trying to work another angle here. Let's get other people to come in and try to work on Trump. Now, whether he realizes it or not, he needs to make a deal soon. That's very, very crucial. And so long as this war in Iran goes on, this is not good for business for BRICS. They understand this. They're very much in line with this. Now, the president also hinted that the Iran conflict could wind down on a similar timeline as Russia's war. But peace negotiations are continuing for now, with the United States remaining insistent on Iran giving up its nuclear ambitions. What nuclear ambitions, though? This is what I have to ask you. What nuclear ambitions do they have? They don't have nuclear ambitions. They have nuclear technology they're using. They're enriching uranium. Of course they are. Every developed world does this. So why are we shocked that the Iranians are doing this? I love it that we think that the Iranians are just simply sitting in the dark right now, and we're this advanced technology, and they don't know what the hell's going on. They're not like that. They're very brilliant people. You got to understand this. So they are going to enrich uranium. That's just a part of what they're going to do. And now they are not going to give it away. They're not going to go down to 0%. It's not going to happen. But the question is, what is Trump going to do when they say no to this? Does the blockade stay in place? And that's the way we'll go now? We'll just try to take ships down? Will the Iranians shoot at those ships? I mean, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know who's going to, go first on this. But I do think something is going to happen. I do think that we're playing with something dangerous now, because if we were to take, say, a Chinese or a Russian or an Indian vessel and take that oil, if you will, I fear that, again, and I've said this to you in the past, that what happens when China sends warships to the North Arabian? What happens when Russia does the same exact thing? What happens if India gets involved? What happens if Pakistan gets involved? By the way, these are all nuclear powers too, by the way. Or what happens, for example, if the Iranians say, you know what? We're very much interested now in this nuclear weapons program. We weren't before, but now you've pushed us into this region where we're saying, you know what, the hell with it. We'll go forth and we'll build this now. That's where I fear that we are heading, and we should not be in this position. And that's why we took a massive misstep in all this. And I think we bit off more than we can chew, folks. And I think that's very, very clear right now to those that are paying attention to exactly what's going on. We do not have the winning cards here right now. We're far away from it. Now, President Trump suggested, obviously, a bit more of a ceasefire between Russia. I know we don't talk too much about what's taking place in the Russia-Ukraine war as much as we ought to. Again, I don't think Vladimir Putin would ever accept a ceasefire right now, especially with the spring offensive that I'm sure he is greatly involved in. Again, Putin lagged on this. He should have ended this war a long time ago. This war of attrition, again, I don't think is being beneficial to him either. But he misunderstood that the United States, that Europe were going to get involved in this to the extent that they would. And since that has happened, then you see this retaliation going back and forth. But make no mistake, the Ukrainians are not winning this conflict, just like the United States is not winning the war in Iran. Just make that very clear. All right, so let's all understand this. This is where we are right now. Russia's winning the war in Ukraine, whenever that should take place. I don't know why they haven't taken Kiev yet. I have no idea. They're playing it slow, but in the process, they end up killing more Ukrainians. And you know, their population has dwindled. That's not going to be the same country it was pre-war in 2022. So, folks, this is where we are in the war. Again, I think it's going to escalate quickly. And if that's not enough, we got to listen to this. This is very, very important. We got to talk about Pete Hegseth yesterday. This is out of the Wall Street Journal. Now, we know that he testified to Congress. Obviously, it didn't go well for him. Pete Hegseth does not articulate his position very well. He tends to deflect when he's asked certain questions, of course. But here we go. He contradicted himself to a point that you can't ignore this. Now, he was in an exchange with Representative Adam Smith out of Washington, and this is one of the ranking members on the committee for the Armed Services Committee yesterday, and they questioned the rationale for this war, for Iran, if they're going to have nuclear technology, and if it had been obliterated. Now, he started off saying, we had to start this war, you said 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying something completely different, that it was completely obliterated. So I got to play for you this exchange. He actually went back and forth with another gentleman, Congressman Nevins, I believe is his name. But Pete Hegseth can't get his story straight. That's the problem with all this. And I ask myself, what is the objective of this? Do we know what the objective is? Did he say what the objective is going to be? How do we know when this war is going to be over, Pete? He doesn't know. He just makes things up as he goes along. And I think it illustrates greatly here in clip 2.
Their nuclear facilities have been obliterated. Underground, they're buried, and we're watching them 24/7. So we know where any nuclear material
reclaiming
might be.
my time for
we're watching
a quick second here. We had to start this war, you just said, 60 days ago, because the nuclear weapon was an imminent threat. Now you're saying that it was completely obliterated?
They had not given up their nuclear ambitions, and they had a conventional shield of thousands of missiles.
So Operation Midnight Hammer accomplished nothing of substance. It left us at exactly the same place we were before. So much so that
their facilities were bombed and obliterated. Their ambitions continue.
Their ambitions continue? How do we know this? There's no proof of this at all. What is he talking about? He said we obliterated everything. We monitored those sites, Isfahan, Fordow, Natanz. So then where are they getting this nuclear technology being built? Where are they weeks away from getting this bomb being built? If everything inside, which was that 60% highly enriched uranium, the uranium hexafluoride, where is it? They obviously still have it because we want it back. So we didn't obliterate everything. So he runs into a big problem. He says, well, we obliterated everything last year. But they still have those ambitions. Where do they have those ambitions? Where is this intelligence coming from? I can tell you exactly where it's coming from. It's coming from Israel. It's coming from the Mossad. Our intelligence indicated that they were not building a nuclear bomb before last June of 2025. And of course, before this invasion on February 28th, 2026. They were not building nuclear technology. It's very, very clear. We know since 2003, they've issued 2 different fatwas saying they're not building a nuclear bomb. They don't want to build a nuclear bomb. It's not their prerogative. They don't want this. It's against their religion. This is what they're saying. Now, some of you are saying to yourself, well, Jerace, they're lying. They obviously want a nuclear bomb. They want to use it on us. Okay, well, then I have to ask you the question then. We ripped up the JCPOA in 2019. They've had how many years to build another bomb? Again, they're always weeks away from it. If they really wanted to build a bomb, if they really had the technology, why would they have built it then? The entire Biden administration, Biden never challenged them once. Why wouldn't they have built it then and had it? They obviously have the technology to do so because they've enriched recently to 60%. So obviously they have the capability, they have the proper amount of centrifuges to do this. They have the technology to do this. And if they wanted to destroy the West and Israel and the United States and, death to America, why wouldn't they have done it then? They can never answer these questions. But when you listen to their politicians, when you listen to them speak, they were willing to come to the table in 2015 with Obama for the JCPOA. They signed on to it. They signed on to the Non-Proliferation Treaty with the UN. They're signatories of that they're not going to build nuclear weapons. Israel does not, by the way, just to be honest with you. Israel hasn't signed on to that. No one's inspecting Israel's weapons of mass destruction, but somehow we're hell-bent on figuring out what the Iranians are doing. They signed on to these things. They said, no, we're not going to build this. They were willing to meet with us last June. They're willing to meet with us again in February. They were meeting with us. We scheduled another round of talks with them. And yet here we go. We ended up bombing them yet again twice while we were in negotiations. Make sense of that. And yet we had to attack them first. This country that we're so fearful of, ladies and gentlemen. It just doesn't make any sense. They've been weeks away since what Netanyahu told us in 1996. They're weeks away, they're weeks away, they're a month away, they're weeks away now. We got to look at Iran. What's Iran doing? They're ready to attack. They're ready to attack. I mean, it's just ridiculousness. None of our intel indicates this, that they're any type of threat to the United States at any point, at any time. That's the truth of the matter. That's what the intel actually tells us. Now, they throw in other accusations, for example, the number 1 state sponsor of terror, which is a complete lie. It's been debunked time and time again. Again, I'll refer you to the CIA's report that just came out recently. I believe since 2000, they tracked all of the world's terror attacks. All of them. They looked at all of them. They assessed all of them. Over 80% in about a 25-year span of time came from Sunni Muslim groups, and of course, the Iranians are Shia Muslim groups. Over 80% of all the terror attacks in a 25 years came from these Sunnis. So Taliban, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, these are the groups that are doing these attacks, the real actual terrorist attacks. And they try to attribute that to Iran. And again, Iran is obviously supportive of Hezbollah. We know this. Hezbollah's a resistance group. Why? Because Israel invaded in 1978. They were occupying southern Lebanon. They formed in 1982, and they kicked them out. And they kicked them out again in 2006. So Hezbollah is a resistance group. It's a resistance militia. That's what they are. That's what Hamas is. Now, does that mean that either group has not done heinous things to Israel? They have. But look who the aggressor is, folks. We've got to be honest with ourselves here. Who is the aggressor in the region? It's Israel. It's Israel right now. That's the way it is. Now, if Iran is neutralized, which again I think is Netanyahu's point here, if Iran is neutralized, if we got a puppet in there, there's not going to be any money flowing to Hezbollah. That means Hezbollah is on its own. Hamas is on its own. The Houthi rebels in Yemen, they're on their own too. And that allows Israel to do whatever the hell they want to do. So if they want to invade southern Lebanon and keep it, they'll do it. That'll be fine for them. They want to take all of Gaza and the West Bank, they'll do it. Nothing's stopping them. Certainly the United States isn't going to stop them. I mean, that leaves maybe the Houthis would try to do something, but that's not going to be effective, I don't think. So we got to look at where we are, folks. We've got to look at Hegseth. Obviously, he's going to be begging for a lot more money. They want to push this military budget to $1.5 trillion. He didn't know that they were spending at least $25 billion so far, which again I think is a very low estimate. I think that's being very, very generous. I have to tell you that. We were spending $1 to $2 billion per day. We also haven't talked about the military installations, for example. What about that? Are we planning to rebuild that? Because then we need hundreds of billions of dollars more. Now, in mid-March, a senior administration official told the Wall Street Journal that the Pentagon asked the White House for another $200 billion for this war. So we only spent $25 billion so far. That's not including the hundreds of billions of dollars that have resulted in the damage of our radars, our military bases in the Gulf Arab states that have been hit by Iran. So I don't even know if we're going to rebuild those. I don't know if those countries will ask us to come back. Only time will tell, but they're going to need a lot more money to rebuild this. And of course, our munitions have been depleted. We need to obviously rebuild very, very quickly. So this is, $200 billion is probably a low estimate. So that's why I think Hegseth is sitting there asking for a lot more money. And especially to tell us, he didn't even know how much we were spending. He had a little back and forth with Ro Khanna as well. But it didn't go very well for Hegseth yesterday, unfortunately. He's got to learn to keep his stories a little bit straighter. I don't know what else to say about this. He's in way over his head right now. And they haven't given us clear objectives. I don't know how Congress is going to go forward. We've obviously reached day 60. Tomorrow, I guess we'll see if Congress convenes to say we're going to declare war or we need to get the hell out of there. I really don't know what else is going to be happening right now. We look at, for example, this out of CBS News, Josh Hawley. By the way, I thought this was interesting. They quoted Josh Hawley, and I want to make sure I get his quote correct here, because it was very, very telling that they didn't think this war was going to go on for some time. They thought this was going to be a one and done. I really believe that. It says here, Republican Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri told reporters the statute does need to be followed, adding that he hoped that the war would conclude by the 60-day deadline. So they were expecting, this is what I believe, and they believe that the war would happen. In 3 days, it would be over with. The Iranian people would rise up. It would be over with. We'd get our victory lap. The regime would collapse. We'd declare we won. And everything would be over. We're not anywhere near that. So I don't know if Congress would declare war. I really don't know if we'd have the votes. I don't believe so. I don't know what it'll take. If Trump will even defy that. Maybe he would. I don't know. I really don't know. We haven't been told as of what's going on. But this is very troubling, folks, if we do continue this war, because now we're acting out of the Constitution completely now. And I don't even think we have the means to even use the War Powers Act, because thanks to Pete Hegseth, thanks to Marco Rubio, they didn't indicate anything that showed Iran was an imminent threat. Oh, they throw the nuclear technology out there. But we know that's obviously not happening. One other thing that they pushed him on to yesterday that I thought was obviously very smart, Representative Seth Moulton talked about the comments that were made prior to the Iran war. This was Hegseth speaking on March 13th in a Pentagon briefing. He said, "We will keep pressing, we will keep pushing, keep advancing. No quarter, no mercy for our enemies." Now, of course, Moulton fired back saying, in order for no quarter or no survivors is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. You understand that's murder. And then, of course, Hegseth has to deflect, and he said the Department of War fights to win. And we ensure that our war fighters have the rules of engagement necessary to be as effective as possible. Oh, okay. What does that have to do with obviously giving quarter to people that are maimed? What does that mean, Pete? I mean, we saw this with the bombing of the boats in the Caribbean. We did a double strike on people that were clinging to wreckage in the ocean. And they said that was completely fine, that they posed some sort of threat. No, they weren't. No, they didn't. They didn't do anything of the sort. They were out of the battle. So they were... What's the term for that? I'm trying to think of it right now. Oh, do you come back? Yeah. That's what they were. They were out. They were out. They can't fight anymore. That's according to the Geneva Convention. You don't kill people once they've surrendered or once they pose zero threat to you anymore. And Pete Hegseth is fine with blowing them up again. So we've got to understand what we're talking about. And by the way, the double tap on the building that had the schoolgirls in it, which was known to be obviously an elementary school. Another big problem for Pete Hegseth, who ordered that strike to happen and ended up incinerating, I believe, at least 60 of them, which is awful. But this is a problem, folks. This is a very big problem for Hegseth. He's been way over his head. He's not followed the rules of engagement. Obviously, in the Caribbean, not giving due process to these fishermen in boats, of which we have no idea if they have drugs on the boats, and we decided to just blow them up, killing over 110 of them. Now we've blown up an elementary school and we think that this is fine? We're double tapping the building? And this is now right, folks. And again, Pete Hegseth has got to know, because he just told you, that Iran is really no threat because we know we obliterated everything last year. They can't go back and say they failed anything. That's the problem. They can't say, well, listen, Midnight Hammer wasn't effective. We've been monitoring them and we found out they were building more. And he tried to come back and say, well, they still have that ambition. Okay, where do they have that ambition, though? What site was worth hitting? Because the first site you hit on that Saturday was the Ayatollah, his family, and some of the members of his military brass. That's what you hit. You didn't strike a nuclear facility and blow up the technology, as you claim to be so invested in, Pete. So he's got a lot on his plate. It's a big problem. I'm very interested to see how this turns out tomorrow, if Congress will call for a quorum and actually vote to continue this war or not. Only time will tell. And by the way, just in case you thought it was bad enough, just really quickly, I want to go over this article out of the Times of Israel. It says here that the IDF issues evacuation warnings for another 15 southern Lebanon villages. So just keep this in mind. There's supposed to be a ceasefire with Lebanon, supposedly. Lebanon is going to be a part of this negotiation with the United States, by the way. If Lebanon is attacked, the ceasefire ends. The war continues on. Let's just keep that very much in mind here. Now, they say Hezbollah activities are forcing the IDF to act against it, as it does not intend to harm you. Yeah, right. You've killed 9 people today, I believe. I think it was 9 people they've killed just today. And where the hell do they get off telling the Lebanese where they can live and where they cannot live and where they will go and where they cannot? This, again, is an illegal occupation. This is why Hezbollah exists. Now, some people come out and say, well, they're telling them ahead of time not to go to this location because they're going to start bombing it. They're not even supposed to be there, folks. There's no reason for them to be there, except Greater Israel is still very, very much in effect. So I wanted to share that with you folks because, again, I tell you before, Israel has no idea what the word ceasefire means, or they simply do not give a damn, unfortunately. So again, we're seeing what's taking place inside Lebanon. It's continuing on, and it's not going to stop. They want that land, and they intend to stay there. And that's why Hezbollah exists. That's why Hamas exists. That's why Iran backs them, because they're also Shia Muslims. That's why you see the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They're backing them as well. They're an alliance, and they stand against everything that the hegemonic powers of Israel and the United States are standing for in the region. And that's really what it comes down to. All right, folks, on a different note, let's move on. Let's bring it back to some domestic affairs here inside the United States. This is out of the Associated Press. A big win for the Republicans, too, by the way. It says here that the Supreme Court weakens the Voting Rights Act and aids GOP efforts to control the House. Now, this is interesting to me. This says here that on Wednesday, SCOTUS hollowed out a landmark civil rights era law that has increased minority representation in Congress and elsewhere, striking down a majority black congressional district inside of Louisiana and opening up the door for more redistricting across the country that could aid Republican efforts to control the House. They had a 6-3 ruling And they did say that the court's conservative majority found that the Louisiana district, represented by Democrat Cleo Fields, relied too heavily on race. Chief Justice John Roberts had described the 6th Congressional District as a snake that stretches more than 200 miles to link parts of Shreveport, Alexandria, and Lafayette, and Baton Rouge, saying that the map is an unconstitutional gerrymander. That's what Justice Sam Alito said. So, when we talk about redrawing districts, obviously some of these states, for example, Texas and Florida, have got a massive influx of people. And they feel that it's time that they redistrict. I don't really like that we're redistricting midway through a census. I don't like that. But I do believe that Trump understands that, he's got to do something to help his odds of winning. I think he understands the reality of that. And I think some of these states are saying to themselves, we can probably draw a couple more Republican seats out if we redraw these maps right now based on the influx of people that have come into our state. Again, I don't deny that. I don't know that it's gerrymandering to the effect that we're drawing districts that are stretching 200 miles just to get exactly what we want, like they've done in California, for example, where they're pulling from well-known blue areas. But this is all part of the problem. California's not getting an influx of people. Virginia's not getting an influx of people. They're simply drawing from areas that are convenient to them, that they control, that they know they can come out and say, look, well, we can gain these seats. We can obviously put more Democrats in, should we want to. And they're disenfranchising the Republican voters in their states. So, California, that's roughly 40% Republican, I'd say at least. They're trying to take the representation in the House down to 9%. In Virginia, they're trying to take it down to, I think it's even lower, maybe 7%. And 46% of the state voted for Donald Trump in 2024. Keep that in mind. Now, Texas is going the other way. Texas is saying, listen, we've gotten so many more millions of people coming into our state in just a few short years because of COVID, because of freedom, because of taxation, and what have you. More people are coming into the Lone Star State. And it only makes sense that we redistrict. Now, again, I don't agree with this to do it right now. I think they should redistrict in 2030 when they're supposed to. But it's not illegal for them to do this. Let's just keep that in mind. There's two things happening here. California had to change their constitution. Virginia has to go ahead and change their constitution. And by the way, they did it illegally too, by the way. But what Louisiana's doing, it's obviously showing they're using race as a preference to gain another seat. It's not just they drew a regular seat, and it just seems to be a black majority seat. They actually purposely did this because they felt it would benefit them. And that's, again, illegal, according to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And that's why the Supreme Court ruled on this. This is exactly why this happened. You're not going to have a racially discriminatory election practice put in place, and that's why they're ruling on behalf of this. So, for example, I think that's why you're seeing things like that. Now, will this happen in Virginia, for example? Will they shoot this down? The Virginia Supreme Court should do that for the reasons I told you before the other day, that they really skipped out on two different steps to make this possible. So, again, I don't see that holding up in court. Obviously, you had a federal judge rule on behalf of that, but it's not going to happen. I'm sorry, I think he was he a federal? I don't know if he was a federal judge. I forget what it was. He might have been a circuit court judge that ruled in favor of it. But again, as I read to you before, they skipped out two of the steps in the Constitution. So I think hopefully the Virginia Supreme Court follows their Constitution and say, listen, you skipped two different steps. You did a simple vote and then you went right to an election, a special election. You skipped out on electing a new Congress, that Congress voting again, or not the Congress, but the House of Delegates, the Virginia State Senate, them voting again in the next election year, coming into office, being seated, voting again, and then putting it to a vote, and then putting it on the ballot in the next coming election. That all didn't happen. They just tried to go as quickly as they could to get it on for 2026. So hopefully we'll see that fail as it ought to. All right, folks, let's move on yet again. we've got to move on. This story is unfolding right now, and I've talked with you about this as well. They seem to have done this very, very stealthily. And it says the House approves reauthorization of the FISA Section 702. No shock there. So now we get more warrantless spying on the American people. We had our wonderful elected leaders voting some 235 to 191. Again, both lawmakers on both sides of the aisle either voted for it or did not vote for it, but they did end up being victorious. And this bill, which would renew the Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, still has to clear the U.S. Senate. However, they did pass another hurdle to get this passed, which, again, I don't know why they're doing this. This is a complete violation of the Fourth Amendment, ladies and gentlemen. Let's make sure that's very clear. Section 702 allows the FISA courts to allow the government to spy on foreigners located abroad. Now, let me just tell you for certain that's not entirely true. This allows you to look at Americans who communicate with people overseas and then spy on them to the sixth degree. So what does that mean? I gave you the example that the great Judge Andrew Napolitano gave in his article last week. If I were to call somebody, let's say it was a family member, let's say I was calling to make an arrangement, if I'm traveling to, let's say I'm traveling to Italy. I'll make it simple. And I call the hotel. And I say, hi, I'm Marco Gerace. I want to, schedule, book a room. That's what I want to do. And we have a conversation. They can take what I've just done, not only spy on them, but spy on me. And if I call, let's say I call my mother, let's say I call someone else, and it goes down the line, they can track myself and all those people. And that's supposed to be constitutional under Section 702. It's a bunch of nonsense. No one signed any warrant for me. I haven't done anything wrong. There's no reason for the government to spy me, but they are doing this. So it's giving them leverage to spy on Americans who are working with people abroad. Doesn't mean they're doing anything illegal, but that's what the law says they can do. So again, this is very problematic. I don't know how the Supreme Court has not ruled on this. Obviously, President Trump originally was against this. They used this to spy on him, folks. And he hadn't done anything wrong. And originally he was against it. Now he's all of a sudden for it. I don't understand this. I don't understand this. These are your elected leaders spying on you, voting to spy on you, the American people. Not because you've done anything wrong, not because you're guilty of something, but because they can spy on you and they want to do that. I don't understand this for the life of me. They do this so clandestinely, but the Republicans largely back this, and I don't understand why. It's unbelievable. And by the way, the Democrats do it too. Don't make no concessions about that. They do the exact same thing. Even this year, they saw a greater number of Democrats who oppose the renewing of Section 702, with many arguing that the Trump administration could not be trusted not to abuse the power to spy. This is hilarious coming from the Democrats. How many times did Joe Biden allow the DOJ to spy on Catholics attending Latin Mass, pro-life protesters, again, not guilty of anything, parents going to school board meetings, speaking out against what filth is in their children's curriculum? What, we're supposed to ignore all this? But both sides are doing it. I mean, that's the problem with this. Both sides are doing this. And why are we, again, renewing this? If you're going to spy on an American citizen, there has to be a reason for it. That's why we get warrants. That's what the Constitution says, and this is a complete violation of it. I don't have anything more to say about this. I'm so upset about this. I can only pray that this fails in the Senate, but we'll see exactly what takes place. We'll see who is bought and paid for very, very soon. All right, folks, this article I was going to go over with you yesterday. I ran out of time, unfortunately, but it's very, very important. And again, this is very troubling, obviously, for those of us who believe in America and want it to obviously flourish. But I do want to draw your attention to something that's very, very important. The Vital Statistics Surveillance Report shows that births declined between, I think it was 1% between 2024 and 2025. This is the general fertility rate, suggesting that there was only 53.1 births for every 1,000 females aged 15 to 44. That's really the window of which women can get pregnant and have children. Now, it doesn't mean you can be 46 or younger than that, but this is the range they looked at in the country. So this equates to 1.57 births per woman. And you need the 2.1 replacement rate. That's what you need, 2.1. So you really need 3 children for every woman. We're not seeing that right now. So we have 3,606,400 births total last year. This was a decrease from 2024 by some 22,000, roughly. So the fertility rate has decreased since 2007 by 23%. And again, this is very, very troubling because it's well below the replacement rate for much of the world. We're seeing this in the West, and we're seeing it here inside the United States and North and South America as well. And why do I bring this up to you? I bring this up to you because, again, there are not enough people. Even Elon Musk has been saying this. He says, I can't emphasize this enough. There are not enough people. If people don't have children, civilization is going to crumble. He's not wrong about this. Now, this guy has 14 kids, so he's gotten busy quite a bit, I'd have to say. Now, one of the things that says, this is by the Christian Post, by the way, but he's neglected one aspect that's very important. And I don't say this to judge people, but I'm just saying this because it's true. He's neglected the institution that creates civilizations and helps children thrive the most, and that is marriage. And like clockwork, I got to tell you, over the weekend, I saw this article just 2 days ago, I think it was. And it was at Mass over the weekend. And my priest brought this up. And he brought up something that was, again, I thought was pretty shocking inside the Catholic Church. He said that of 10 babies that he baptizes now, so every 10 that he gets, 8 will be from unwed parents. And again, this is in the Catholic Church. And this made, he's making an observation, of course. But children need to see their parents commit the sacrament of marriage with each other, as we call it, of course. But this creates a stronger foundation for the child. They see that their parents are together. Their parents have, obviously, committed that sacrament. Now, I thought that was very interesting that my priest said that, and then I saw this article a couple days later, and of course it brings us into the fertility rates. Less people are having children today. Now, there's many reasons for that. Maybe you have less people getting married. Maybe less people want children. We know that, we talked about the inflation rate at the beginning of the program. It's very troubling. Things cost so much more. People are more reluctant to have children because they're uncertain about what's going on. And when we have times of uncertainty, or if it just simply costs too much for them, they tend to not do that. When I look at my own family, we look at, for example, my great-grandparents had all sides of the family had, probably between 5 and 10 or even more children. That doesn't happen today because it costs so much to have children. It costs so much more to make ends meet. When things cost so much, people are more reluctant to have children or have more children. They're content with having just 1 or 2. You need to have 3, though. That's the problem. And so that's why, again, I tell you, we need to do better all around, of course. We need to fix our economy. We need to fix the dollar. But we need to make sure that before we have children, we get married so the children see that as an example. That's very, very important. I want to say one other thing, too. The Brookings Institute, this is a left-wing organization, too, by the way. So it's not something I really would follow, but they bring up a good point. This is what they said. They say, in order to avoid poverty inside the United States, get a good education, or at least that, complete high school, or have some type of competency in a trade, work in that career full-time, and do not have children until you're married. So really it's indicating what the church says. Get married before you have children. It's very, very important that we do that. And I say this not because just because my priest said this because they're baptizing kids out of wedlock and that they'll be poor. I don't believe that necessarily. But because we need a stable environment for children. And I'll add one more addendum to this list. Marry a spouse that shares your values and outlook on life. This is very, very important. If you marry someone, and let's say you're a devout Christian or conservative or devout Catholic, if you will, and you marry an atheistic leftist who believes the only thing wrong with America is there, aren't enough free abortions or rent freezes or bike lanes, and, wants your son to wear a dress, probably not going to work out for you. I just thought I'd say that. So it's more than just the looks. You got to look more into the values and obviously the cultural norms for you, and you got to understand that. That's very, very important. But your children need to see that stability is what I'm saying to you. And I'll just leave you with this on this article. This is from Ephesians. I rarely quote the Bible to you, but I'm going to quote it right now because I think it's good. God tells us in Ephesians, "Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Of course, become fruitful and multiply." Or, in our case, obviously, keeping up the existing demographics. And you need to have, 3 to 4 kids today. We need to keep up with our existing demographics here in the United States. Otherwise, you don't have a country, folks, and it falls apart. And I don't think we want this. I don't think anybody wants this. It's not going to be good for the United States if we do this. And so I only say this to you because it's very important that we keep our society as is. And we've long neglected that for quite some time, though, unfortunately. So it's not a blessing for me to say this to you, but it's obviously something that's very, very important. We need to make sure we keep up with the existing demographics here in this country. And that's the way it needs to be. That's how you save America, ladies and gentlemen. Folks, I unfortunately missed the article I wanted to talk to you about Alex Padilla. We'll talk about it tomorrow, though. It's about voting in the country, too. It kind of ties into what we were talking about. But we'll go over it tomorrow. So that's a wrap for today's show, folks. Thank you for being here, as always. Share the show with others. Make sure you're staying prepped with food, water, medicine, ammo, anything to be self-sufficient, especially in times right now. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.